Do you know how fast you were going, son?
Call me Ed.
Do you know how fast you were going, Ed?
You mean exactly?
Yes, exactly.
No, not exactly. How fast?
Fast.
Faster?
You were going very fast.
Fast is my job, officer.
Fast is your job?
Yes, sir.
What kind of job?
I deliver, sir.
What do you deliver?
The world's greatest gourmet sandwiches.
I thought Jimmy John's had the world's greatest gourmet sandwiches.
Jimmy John's does have the world's greatest gourmet sandwiches.
So you deliver for Jimmy John's?
I deliver for Jimmy John's.
So do you always deliver fast?
I always deliver fast.
How fast?
I deliver subs so fast you freak.
It's not smart to freak a cop, son.
You didn't order Jimmy John's sub, sir.
So if I did order a Jimmy John's sub, when would I get it?
Now.
What if I don't want it now?
Then call later.
Or I could pick it up myself.
Or you can pick it up yourself.
Because I'm pretty fast, too.
I'm sure you are, sir.
Very fast.
I believe you, sir.
Faster than you.
No way, sir.
Way faster.
In your dreams.
You dissing me, son?
No, sir, I'm polite.
Fast and polite?
Very polite and very, very fast.
Is that a challenge, son?
No, sir, it's a fact.
Let's burn rubber, kid.
It wouldn't be fair.
Why not?
You've got a fully blown V8 Camaro with slicks and headers.
So?
I've got a 10-speed bike.
I'll let you off with a warning.
Laugh like the sun always shines, thrilling will, fun.
Hi, this is Katreese Barnes, and the show Something to Consider. It's going to be a show where we feature music, musicians, astronomers, archaeologists, medical doctors, alternative health practitioners, witch doctors. We're going to focus on lifestyles, food, esoterics, and a wide range of subjects to consider. And today, my guest is, let me zoom her in, Marie Ryan.
Hi.
Hi. Marie is a friend of mine I met 4 years ago at a cancer clinic on the East Coast. We're both cancer survivors, and we thought we'd talk about some of our stories through the years and the things we've done and why we're still alive, because you're a how many year survivor of endometrial cancer?
Original diagnosis was 2006 with a reoccurrence 5 years after that. So I'm 11 years out from the original diagnosis. Yeah.
Well, I got you beat.
What's your year?
17 years.
You got me beat. You got me beat. Wow, you got me beat by 6 years. Good job. Good job.
Yeah, well, talk about how you were originally diagnosed. How did you know you had something wrong, or did you just do a regular checkup? Because endometrial cancer is not something people test for regular.
No, I was, and I didn't have any of the demographics that you would expect. You know, someone with estrogen cancer, endometrial cancer with estrogen dominance, usually you look for somebody that's, very overweight. I've never been overweight. I've always been on the thin side. I didn't fit, the typical pattern, but I had a lot of unusual, abnormal bleeding, and it was abnormal enough that my OB/GYN said, we need to do an endometrial biopsy. We could do one in the office, or we can go to the OR and, do it in the operating room, D&C. So we opted to do it in the office, and it came back endometrial cancer. Knocked me right out of my chair. I was shocked to hear it because I was 46 years old. So I wasn't, wasn't the right age. I wasn't the right body type. It just wasn't, it really wasn't to be expected, but it happened. It happened, and it was devastating. So that was in 2006. I did your traditional surgery, which would be the radical hysterectomy, which they remove the uterus, the ovaries, and a lot of lymph nodes, which is a difficult surgery to recover from because you're swollen like you're pregnant for quite some time, and that had to be followed up with in 2006 I had to follow up with radiation therapy.
And then you said you were in remission for 5 years, but you questioned the word remission?
Yeah, there was a 5-year period where, CAT scan, PET scan was negative, blood work was negative, and I was told at the time of surgery there was no vascular spread, all the lymph nodes were negative, and, you're good. So I was really optimistic that I was good. And then 5 years out, I developed pain in the groin area, and then there was swelling in the groin area. And most likely it's scar tissue. Let's not, get too crazy here. But then one of my doctors said, let's get a CAT scan. And okay, that doesn't look quite right. Let's get a biopsy. And then the biopsy showed that it was a lymph node that was cancerous. So that lymph node had to have been there. That cancer had to have been there in 2006 in order for it to show up 5 years later, but it wasn't enough cancer to be picked up by blood work or a PET scan or a CAT scan for 5 years. For 5 years.
My. So
Yeah.
basically, you still had the cancer for 5 years.
It had to have been there because the uterus was totally removed. So the uterus
Right.
doesn't grow back. So it had to have been there all along, but it just, that lymph node wasn't sampled at that time of surgery, so we didn't pick up on it, is the only way it was explained to me. So that was really, really unfortunate because we felt 95% or more confident that I was, surgical cure, back in 2006, but that didn't turn out that way 5 years later.
I understand the shock of being diagnosed because when I was diagnosed in 2000, I was a vegetarian and organic eating vegetarian type person. And everybody assumes when you're eating healthy, you're not going to end up with breast cancer. And, through the years in doing all types of alternative therapies, I've learned there's a certain naivety in that
Right.
mindset.
Yeah, you're not totally protected. I was following what I thought was a healthy diet. I was biking. I was doing 20-mile bike rides. I was doing yoga. I was swimming. I thought I was doing all the right things. And it happened anyway. So you do everything that's right or that you think is right, but it can still happen. And it did.
Did anyone else in your family have it?
No.
Oh, wow.
No,
So it wasn't even
no.
like a history of...
Not even a family history. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
So what types of things did you do after you were re-diagnosed?
Yeah, because in that 5-year period, I just continued to do what I thought was a healthy diet and exercise, which I enjoyed very much. Then after the situation changed, 5 years later, so now we're into like 2012, I knew I had to do things differently because now this is a situation where the cancer was in a lymph node. That lymph node became a tumor. That tumor involved that surrounding area. So now they're telling me this is a stage 3C, which is, I know, my background as a nurse practitioner, and I worked in oncology, so I know that that's much more serious. And in order to prove survivorship, I thought I would do what they recommended, which was chemo and radiation, but I wanted to also supplement that, strengthen that with some alternative therapies. So I did the second surgery. I did full pelvic radiation again, and I did also their chemotherapy, and I was quite toxic and quite sick with a wiped out immune system. And
Wow.
then I said, okay, how do I build myself back up?
Yeah.
Rebuild. And that's when I started to explore things like IV vitamin C and other things that could really, strengthen the body. And I wanted to prevent reoccurrence, and I didn't really know if I was clear. I didn't know if because they got at surgery, they could remove what they could see, but you don't know, did you get microscopic? Has it spread further? You just don't know. So
Right.
I wanted to be thorough, more thorough this time than I was even 5 years earlier.
Okay. And
Yeah.
the vitamin C, how long did you do that before you started seeing a difference in your immune system?
I had a port put in for the chemotherapy, so when I kept it in so I could do the IV vitamin C, because it can be a little hard on your veins in the arms and in your hands. It's very, very acidic. So I kept the port in place. I did IV vitamin C for about a good 2 years, and I wasn't getting sick, but I still had a very, very low white count. With so much chemo and so much radiation, I was just, my white count plummeted. I was neutropenic. I was taking injections to help the immune system. So it still wasn't quite where I wanted to be with the immune system, even after that much work with vitamin C. So then I started looking into other things like GC-MOF. You may have heard of GC-MOF, an
Oh,
injectable.
yes.
Okay.
DC meth,
G-
I know because, go ahead. Talk about GC Muff.
It's expensive. It comes from another country. You can't. I'm not able to get it anymore, and I'm not looking to get it anymore. But I started using something like that to build up the immune system because when we measured the white count, the T cells, the phagocytic index, and all of those types of things, your CD3, CD4, CD8, your T cells come from your thymus gland, and that's a good part of your immune system. And mine were all low; they were in the gutter. So, and killer cells, your natural killer cells like CD57, CD56. Again, mine were tanking down still this far out. So I was looking for other things, and that's why I added the GCMOF. I used it for maybe about 8 or 9 months, but I did not see improvement. So I scratched it.
Well, I remember researching GCMOF. And I called one of the companies in the UK that sells it, and it is expensive.
It's expensive.
I remember it's like $800 for a month supply.
Yes. Yes.
Right? Yeah.
Yes, it's expensive. Yeah. And you have to inject yourself at home. It's by injection. Yeah.
They were kind of saying it was a cure, and
they were calling
about to
it a
opening a clinic in Switzerland, and had a lot of people believing that. And I remember drilling the lady over the phone about what it was and how it was made and everything, and her response was, "I find this line of questioning offensive." And I was like, well, if I'm going to send $800 to the UK for something that I've never, I don't even know you guys, and I know that clinic closed.
Yeah, and they should be able to answer any question you have, and they should be able to stand by their product.
And I don't know how effective it is either. I mean,
I'm not familiar. I'm not hearing about anybody using. I mean, no one in my circle that I hear about using it anymore. But I know quite a few people that tried it. But I didn't see anybody turn around with a cure from it.
And see, that's another thing about alternative therapies, though. In my 17 years, I've done mostly alternative therapies.
Yes.
I'm lucky to be alive with the things that I've done. I am really lucky. I'm just like a dumbass when I look back at some of the things I've done, and including going to Japan for a healing retreat for some energetic, I don't even know what that was. It was like a week and a half or something at this retreat where you sit under domes and these crystal domes.
And that was a cancer treatment, therapy, cure? What was that?
Any cure. Everything.
Okay.
That was stupid. That was really dumb.
Well, we'll say, different states of consciousness. Okay.
Yeah.
You were exploring.
Well, speaking of vitamin C, the Hematology Times this past 2 weeks actually posted an article about vitamin C at the Perlmutter Cancer Center. And they say that vitamin C may reprogram mutated stem cells, causing them to re-enter a normal pathway in which they mature and eventually die.
And that's in one specific type of cancer?
They didn't really say.
Oh, okay.
Just an article.
Excellent. I'm glad it's being.
It was for leukemia.
For leukemia.
I forgot which one. AML.
Acute myelocytic link.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm glad they're looking at it because it's been used, and if there's efficacy, let's know about it. Yeah, for sure.
Well, I remember years ago. I mean, vitamin C was one of the first things I did 17 years ago. Mm-hmm. And there was a doctor who shall remain nameless in Manhattan I went to, and I remember going and getting the drips and feeling nauseous every time I got a drip.
Really?
And then I ended up looking for another clinic just to find something cheaper. And so I ended up trekking to Brooklyn to this other clinic. And I found out one of the guys who worked there used to work for the doctor in Manhattan. And he told me that doctor used cheap vitamins.
What type of vitamins?
Cheap vitamins.
Oh, cheap.
That's why I was getting sick from the vitamin C drips as opposed to what was happening in Brooklyn. And, that's another thing about the alternative world is people just assume people have integrity.
That's right.
And
Right.
what I've seen is that there are a lot of people out here who don't mind taking your last $10,000, $15,000, you know?
That's right. Yes, if you're looking into alternative therapies, be very careful because they are expensive.
Expensive. And
Expensive.
I
Yes.
remember this guy even mailing me a BioRay machine that I didn't even ask for. That was $4,000 COD. I mean, I was into like
Wow.
BioRays for the time period.
I remember, yeah, I remember that stuff came across my desk too. Yeah, I looked at it. Yeah. You know, it's funny because a lot of these therapies, the testimonials, they're just so convincing.
I know.
And you know, you're at a point where you want something that's going to work now, or maybe you think you've got 2 weeks, maybe you think you've got 3 months to live. So you want something that's going to work quick. And testimonials can be so convincing, but you know, proof is in the pudding. You know, people are really, you know, where can you find someone who can reproduce those results? I mean, true results are reproducible. Yeah.
I'm going to pull up the picture of this device I bought years ago. I can't even believe this is one of the reasons why I say I'm surprised I'm alive still. I paid $800 for this Onetsu. No, it doesn't even look medical. If you could see it. And
not on my screen, but that's okay. Yeah.
The woman who sold it, I met her at one of those health expos that they do in New York regularly.
Right.
And she,
right.
you know, she's with all these other cancer experts, so I just assumed she was an expert. And she had a book called Overcome Cancer. So, you know, she did one of her little heat therapies on me that day, and I was like, okay. She says, you need to come and see me. So I started going to see her, and she convinced me that that device and this energy device were gonna get rid of the cancer, and it actually made it worse over an 8-month time period. But I also had some of my other friends going to her for different things like fibroids and you know, sciatica or whatever, and she was just taking our money basically. And then I eventually had that device analyzed.
Yes.
By a friend of mine who's an electrician, and he said, well, you just bought a $800 iron.
Oh my God.
That really is worth $25, at most $30 after he opened it up.
That's why, yes, we have to be careful. And, you know, we really have to help each other. Those of us who've been there, we've been through it, you know, we've got to help each other, like, you know, what to do and what not to do.
Oh, yeah. And especially with the supplements and all the things you take internally, because this at least was like a heat device. But when you start taking supplements inside, I mean, you could mess yourself up if you're allergic.
You could take something that's going to promote cancer growth. You know, if you really, you know, like there are certain juices out there that people take, you know, they could be taking too much sugar. They could be, you know, hurting themselves without proper guidance.
Oh, I went through that with this alternative doctor who convinced me to do a Budwig-esque diet.
Okay.
Which was more vegetarian with flaxseed and not flaxseed. I would just say just juicing every day. And my markers just skyrocketed from juicing every day. And I started developing fibromyalgia symptoms too. And after I got so sick, I stopped it and cut out carbs. And in 3 days, all those fibromyalgia symptoms disappeared. So that's another thing. People don't realize how many different kinds of cancers there are, how many different body types.
Yes.
Blood types, environmental stuff, you know.
And a cancer type that you start off with can change. And what a cancer responds to initially can change. Even when I did some of these alternative therapies, I rotated them because it just seemed like, you know, whatever modality you used, you know, use it with wisdom. And now we're even with traditional chemotherapy or IPT chemotherapy, they're rotating the chemotherapies so the cancer doesn't become resistant to it. So we have to think of that in terms of even natural therapies. You rotate them or you change it up a little bit So the
Now
cancer.
you mentioned IPT. There are probably a
Oh
lot of
yes,
people who don't know.
let's yeah, good point. Let's go back over that. Yes, insulin potentiated therapy. Maybe yeah, Katreese, you actually went through it. Maybe you would like to.
I actually went to
You
this
actually did it.
clinic in Chicago where Dr. Stephen Eyre brought IPT to America. I'm actually on their website right now.
Okay.
But the concept of it is kind of hard being tech director and talking at the same time. Okay. The concept of it is to that cancer loves sugar, and when you inject somebody with insulin, it opens up the cancer's insulin receptors, right?
Yes, exactly.
And then you blast that person with like a low dose amount of chemo, and it supposedly kills more cancer cells.
Right, because the cancer cell will see the insulin, and the cancer cells have many insulin receptors on that cell membrane. So the insulin goes to the cell membrane first, opens up the channel, and then they push the chemotherapy so it gets right into the cell. In theory. And I do believe, in theory, and I do believe it makes sense. It makes sense.
I mean, it did work a little bit. I mean, it brought my numbers down.
Okay, and you did it for?
About 8 months. That was in 2012. That was the only chemo I've had in 17 years, though.
Amazing. So you've done a lot of natural therapies or alternative therapies.
Yeah. And but I've done a few. I've taken some medications too, but not like I've not done the heavy duty chemo, lose your hair, sick.
Yeah.
Thing.
Yeah.
I haven't done that. But I also am somebody who will do a 2-week fast.
Wonderful.
So
wonderful.
You know, I have the ability to do that, so other people can't, and they're finding more and more that fasting takes what were we talking about? Fasting takes the T regulatory cells, it expels it from the T regulatory cells actually help the cancer hide
it cloaks
in the immune system. Yeah,
right.
It cloaks it. So when you fast, your body then is able to find the cancer or weakens the cancer, right?
Yes, that's exactly what we were reading. Yeah, and now when you're fasting, you're water fasting. You're taking just water. Okay. And
well, I have potassium issues, so I'll do occasional bone broth too. Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
And people are intimidated by that word fasting, but you can actually work up to it. You can do a 12-hour fast. Just to start, you can fast, let's say, from 7 p.m. to 7 a.m., only have water. And then maybe if you're okay with that, then you can do a 16-hour fast. And then, if you're okay with that, you do a 24-hour fast. And you'd be surprised how you can train your body to accommodate the fasting, which the benefits are amazing. And they're using it with also, the cancer cells cannot, they just keep living and living and living. They don't die. However, when you're fasting, the cancer cell mechanism changes, and now they do die because of the fasting.
I'm going to pull up a picture of this professor named Walter Lugo. He's the professor and director of the University of Southern California Longevity Institute, and he's one of the ones pioneering this low-calorie fasting-like diet with chemotherapy that is enabling the immune system to recognize and kill skin and breast cancer cells. And this is like some recent studies too. This isn't like some internet
right, not just something
YouTube
you Googled.
channel like, oh yeah, this will cure your cancer. This is like research
and it can potentiate your chemotherapy. It can potentiate if you're doing traditional methods, it can potentiate it. So there's a lot of benefit to these fasting techniques.
Yeah, I mean they're just actually starting the research now. I mean, they're just with fasting, the ketogenic diet, and combining that with like mistletoe extract or things like DCA that seem to be helping people manage or even shrink tumors. Because another guy out in Boston College, Thomas Seyfried, he's actually pioneering this
He does the ketogenic diet?
He does
Did I-
ketogenics. He wrote a book
Yeah.
called Cancer as a Metabolic Disease, and
Oh, right, right.
he created this formula. I'm going to pull it up really quick that I think is masterful.
This is when you're going to actually measure your ketones in your
Yes.
blood? Yes, yes,
If
yes.
you in his laboratory, if you take a blood glucose level and divide it by 18, and then divide it by your ketones, which ends up being your glucose ketone factor. Say if yours is around, I guess, 70 in the 70s, and you divide it by 18, and your ketones are like 4.0, you get a GK factor of like 1. They found that anytime someone was a 1 or below, or the rats were 1 or below,
The rats.
the tumors would shrink or the cancer cells would be weakened.
That's exciting.
Yeah, so
That's
that's just
exciting.
with food.
That's exciting.
So, weaken cancer cells, and then you add a little bit of chemo, or add a little bit of this, or add a little bit of that.
I mean, think about it, instead of going to these really expensive things, these things, fasting, ketogenic diet, you're not going to go broke, and you're going to potentiate any therapy that you're already considering. So this is really excellent information to share with people.
Oh yeah, and like if people don't know what a ketogenic diet is, it's a high-fat, low-protein, low-carb diet, and people differ in terms of how much fat you should eat. I even read recently a doctor said you should have at least 7 cups of vegetables a day on it.
Hard to do, yeah.
But what's different about the cancer ketogenic diet is that it's calorie restricted, which is different than the ketogenic diet people are doing just to lose weight.
Exactly.
You can't be eating all that food. You can't be eating all that protein. You can't be eating all that cheese.
Right.
It's got to
right.
be calorie restricted. It's like it's almost putting your body in that fasting state.
Wow.
And then people can see the results. I mean, I've seen the results of it myself. I mean,
Fabulous.
that's why I'm still here.
Hey, you're doing something right. Well, your doctors aren't arguing with you. I mean,
Nobody's arguing with me.
Right,
They said,
right.
this bitch is crazy. Anybody who knows me, they're like, she's crazy. She went to Japan and slept under some domes to heal herself. Crystal domes. I'll never forgive myself for that one.
No real mistakes. Different states of consciousness. Yeah, you were exploring.
Oh yeah, I did a lot of energy healing, and I even did. I have it here. I'm pulling up the zapper.
Oh, the zapper.
The zapper. Like,
Yes.
What was I thinking with this little device? It supposedly gets rid of parasites.
Right.
Now, you know what? I'm not saying some people haven't benefited from it, because Hulda Clark had some sort of history. This lady who supposedly had this zapper and a diet and everything, and was curing people of cancers and different diseases.
Right.
But
But it probably didn't cure cancer. At least not the zapper.
yeah, maybe not cured. Maybe made people feel better. I don't even know. But I never saw a parasite come out using this thing.
Well, I don't think that's a very expensive device. So
No, this was cheap. There are some out there that are in the hundreds.
yeah, but we'll give you a pass on that.
Yeah, I didn't spend money on that one, but I did spend. Oh, I'm embarrassed to say it. I'm embarrassed to say. Should I say it?
Well, go ahead.
On the energy machine, I spent $2,000.
Okay.
That was in 2000. What year was that? 2002.
All
I guess
right,
I'm surprised I'm still here.
You've earned that money back by now.
Yeah, I've earned it back, but it's just I'm sharing this just for people to be aware that
Don't get scammed. Right.
Don't
right,
get
right.
scammed.
Don't get
Yeah.
scammed. Get healthy, but don't get scammed at the same time. Yeah, because
Yeah.
I bought. What did I buy? I bought a biomat. I love the biomat. Feels great, but it doesn't cure cancer, But it does. Maybe it gets my lymphatics moving. Maybe it gets some detox going, and that's good. But yeah, we have to, whatever modality we're using, we have to know what to expect from it. And putting things together, I think, like you did and I did, I think you get a package. You get a combination of things that'll get you to where you want to be. And it's a lot of experimentation. Yeah.
A lot of experimentation.
A lot of
Oh my
experimentation.
gosh.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's why I'd like to have this as a regular feature where we just focus on one supplement, because we can
Yes, we could do that.
talk about one supplement, maybe find other people who've done it, and
Yes.
really dig in and not just,
Not
have
just
the general, oh yeah, this cured somebody's cancer, or cannabis oil cures cancer, or this cures cancer. And I've known people who almost died doing cannabis oil.
You mentioned that. Yeah, you did mention that. Yeah, yeah.
Now, it might help somebody with like side effects and things from chemo and things, and there might be some people who actually did go into remission from cannabis oil. I just haven't met them yet.
I haven't met them, but there are those testimonials out there. Yeah, but I haven't met them. But it should be reproducible. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I know there was a doctor in California I met who said amongst his patients there were people who were going into remission, and he said there was no rhyme or reason for the ones who did, because there was no logic.
Wow, that's amazing. That's amazing. Well, that's someone to keep track of.
And they were doing like a pharmaceutical grade, a spray. It wasn't just like street drugs.
Mm-hmm.
It was like a pharmaceutical CBD spray.
Oh, okay.
That was expensive as well.
Another expensive therapy, not covered by insurance. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think in a month that spray would cost you about $1,200.
A lot. That's a lot. It's a lot. That's
So
a lot.
maybe it's like you just will yourself well, because I just spent $1,200 on some spray.
It's got to work.
I am sure.
I can't go back to my family
And tell them
them
I spent
all this money.
$1,200, and now I'm dying.
Anyway.
Yeah, well, I hope we can make this a regular feature.
I hope so. I'm anxious to hear what people want to hear more of. That would be great feedback, if it comes in. Yeah.
Okay. I'm
Yeah.
sure it will. I mean,
Yeah.
who doesn't want to? I mean, how many people are getting diagnosed these days? It's like,
Numbers are only going up. Yeah.
yep,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
younger and younger, all ethnicities, all over the world,
Yeah.
for whatever reason.
It is global. Yeah.
So, next time I would like to focus on things that I know have been, like the ketogenic diet, going more into
Okay.
detail of how
That
it
would be
works.
great. That would be
And,
great.
Great to get Seafried on.
That would be great.
Yeah.
Get him on. Yeah.
So we shall work on that.
Good. Good.
All right. Well, this has been fun.
Wonderful. Yeah.
Thanks for joining me on this episode
Yeah.
of Something to Consider. And
Thanks for
I hope we gave people something to consider. And also just be careful out there if you are facing a cancer diagnosis. I'm smiling right now. I mean, I'm 17 years later, of course.
Right.
I don't want to diminish the seriousness of it, but I really am lucky to be alive.
And you've had your challenges along the way. Yes. Yes. And so have I. And so have I. And then I would change it. I'd change it. Change what I'm doing. Something doesn't look right in my blood, or something doesn't feel right, change my therapy. Yeah.
And testing. Get tested.
Testing.
Don't just assume you feel better.
Yes. Okay.
All right.
Excellent.
This has been a great show. Thanks for coming in, and I'll see you next Thursday at 9 p.m. Something to consider.
Till then.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Laugh like the sun always shines. Spinning wheel, fun times, and there's